Hello everyone and welcome to a very special virtual session from GDG India. Myself Ransi from GDG Cloud Bangalore and we also have Dharmesh from GDG Cloud Mumbai who will be the host for today's session. So we are all living in extraordinary and unprecedented times. India is in dire straits with the COVID-19 situation and we empathize with each one of you who is facing the challenge. The pandemic has created a strong impact on the economy as well as one's physical and mental health. Through the session, we hope to touch base with all of you as sort of like a temperature check to support you and your well-being under the umbrella of anxiety, grief, and burnout. So before we begin, let me ask Dharmesh to get the ball rolling by setting the tone and the context, the disclaimer, and also showcase or familiarize with everyone the existing work that's been done from the overall GDG India community. So over to you, Dharmesh.
Sure, thanks, Ransi. I know these are sort of difficult times, but I'm sure this too shall pass, and we'll really overcome that with the best of the spirits. So, with that, let me share my screen. I already shared that. Yeah. Okay. So, what we have today for you is a session that is potentially trying to solve certain common myths and your issues that are related to wellness and mental health. We have this in association with Therapize India, and this has been presented by Ayesha Sharma, the details of which we'll be sharing shortly. But yeah, before that, we'll just have a quick disclaimer. Please note that this event is more of a support event. What we are trying to promote and inculcate is a positive mindset, and it's more to support everyone's well-being, and the organizers including Google, GDG communities, the associated organizations including the facilitator are not really responsible for an individual's well-being or mental health. So you are responsible for that. So just a short disclaimer around that. Now, we would also want to appreciate some fantastic community efforts that are happening across the GDG communities. I'm sure a lot of folks are doing, but we have restricted this to the GDG communities that are there. We have something like India Beats COVID. Few organizers from GDG Delhi have developed a portal to share verified details around donors, oxygen cylinders, and availability of beds. You can refer that portal. Likewise, a similar kind of an effort has been done by GDG Patna. They have developed something called as healthcare warriors to aggregate such information at a similar scale. And I'm sure these are really massive efforts that have been put in across for just the love of the community. Another two that I would like to highlight is Project Q Care. It's by a member from GDG Madurai, Senthil. And here it's more for the government to track and monitor people who are under quarantine and contain their potential threat to people in their locality. Also, while this there are a lot of logistics to take care of, definitely food is something that needs to be also kind of managed. And Mayur from GDG Surat has developed an app called Roti Sabji, where people who are actually unable to arrange meals from themselves when they are diagnosed with COVID, maybe their extended family is also affected. So this app actually helps them connect with individuals or communities who can give them a supply of their food chain on a regular basis. So with that, we start off, and we also want to thank all our partner communities, our extended family of GDG communities and members across India in making this possible and giving all your support and faith while we are in these tough situations. So with that, Ransi, would you like to introduce our guest for today?
Sure, yeah, thanks, Dharmesh. So the therapist that we'll be facilitating the session is Ayesha Sharma. So Ayesha Sharma is a psychotherapist with a master's degree in clinical mental health from the University College London. Ayesha has extensive experience working with adolescents and adults. She has previously worked as the college counselor, heading the Jane Heredia Center for Counseling at the Sophia College Movement. She was also a researcher, group facilitator for schools, and senior research programs officer at the iCall helpline, Tata Institute for Social Sciences, for this towards the better mental health outcomes over the past 4.5 years. Currently, Aisha is the founder of Dialogue Mental Health, which is a private practice. So, all right. So, without further ado, over to you, Aisha. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Ransi and Dharmesh, for introducing this session and getting it started. And I just want to check if my screen is visible to everybody.
Yes.
I think today I'm very happy to be facilitating this session, and on behalf of Therapize India. Therapize is mental health platform where there are mental health professionals that you can reach out to connect with in case you know the huge need that we have now for mental health support is just increasing day by day, especially in these really, really tough times. And so I think Therapize is one such place, and I'm happy to be here on behalf of Therapize. Today, the topic that we're going to be talking about is, mental health in these times. What does it look like? When there is a huge second wave of the pandemic, where we're still isolating 1 year and more on since it came into our lives, and we're socially isolated. We are living with masks on our faces. We're working from home day and night, and these are objectively tough times. We're seeing loss at a scale that we've not previously seen. Times are tough, and how are we then coexisting with this giant, with COVID-19? You know, yes, there is a physical coexistence where we're wearing masks, we're protecting ourselves, we're wearing face shields, we're not stepping out, we're isolating, we're quarantining. The other aspect is also coexisting with all the feelings that it has brought up. Just from having been in this strange new normal situation that we call. This is the new normal, the new situation that we find ourselves in. We know that it is extremely, extremely tough to also take care of ourselves. We've not previously seen any situation like this. We've not had to go through something for an extended period of time like this. It's prolonged chronic stress for us. It's prolonged periods of worry. Will I be okay? Will my loved ones be okay? When will this end? How will we get through this? And so, in that sense, with the second wave of rising corona cases, massive amounts of death, loss, feelings of helplessness, there are also a second wave of big feelings that have come on to us. We are feeling extremely helpless in these circumstances. We don't know where, who the next victim will be, how we will go through these times, whether or not we can control who gets it. Despite sometimes our best efforts, we've heard that people are getting infected. We are also helpless in whether or not we will be able to find the help that we need. Whether in our community, in our systems, whether if we get sick, how will we then cope? We don't know much about the new strains of COVID, and so there is that helplessness. There is a lot of grief. I think in some way or form, we've all come face to face with the loss, either of an idea of the kind of life we were going to live in 2020, 2021, loss of a life, whether directly or indirectly. We've come, there is a loss of hope in a sense. I don't know when this will end. I don't know how it will look when this will end. What is the new normal? Is there a normal after this? Will I be able to live my life as I used to? There is the grief that we're holding about that. There's the loss of that idea, of that, of people, of things. Hopelessness, helplessness, exhaustion. All of us have been working at home, working from home, doing home chores, living with in sometimes difficult circumstances for some of us, and there is that exhaustion of work, of coping with a lot of trauma. There is in the in our nation at this point, there is collective trauma. In the world, there is collective trauma. We're all just grappling, coping, struggling to come to terms with this new reality of ours. We're scared. Is it safe to step out? Who is it safe to meet? And yet we're feeling isolated. We're feeling very, very lonely. Our small, big circles and networks of support have suddenly lost space in our life. In the morning, if you would go to office and you would be greeted by somebody who would give you chai, that was a connection. If in the evening you were leaving and somebody would say bye to you in the office, although you didn't have much interaction, they may not have been your friend. But it was just those micro interactions, micro meetings, micro community that we had formed in our everyday life, in our travels, when we were traveling to office, our commute back. All of those smaller connections have been lost. So we're really feeling a sense of isolation. Sometimes we're feeling guilt. Could I have done more to protect myself? Can I do more to protect my family? Am I able to do something right now to help the many, many people who are struggling? Some of us have that guilt. Some of us may feel sadness, about the things that have happened, the way that we have had to cope with things. A lot of us are feeling guilty also about not being able to work as much as we would have liked to. And we keep comparing ourselves and we say, a lot of times in sessions now, this is coming up that I'm just not able to work the way I used to. I was never this way. We're feeling anxious, isolated, hopeless, angry. We're feeling all of these big emotions. And so, in that sense, there is the second wave of all of these emotions, but amplified. They're much bigger. The circumstances are extremely, extremely tough. And if we are in this situation, we have to acknowledge that it is a huge time of uncertainty for us. We just don't know. We don't know anything for certain. We don't know when this will end. We don't know what a definite end will look like. We don't know. We can't make plans for way ahead in the future. So in these uncertain times when we don't know much, we kind of start to worry a lot. What will happen if this happens? What will happen if, I'm unable to cope with that? How do I prepare for this? All of these anxious thoughts, worries, not being able to sleep at night. It's not always, anxiousness or worry is not always in the thinking. It's also in the body. When we get heart palpitations, when we're unable to wind down from our day, relax, just be with ourselves, center ourselves. It's in that. When we're unable to sleep at night, when we're unable to, go to sleep at normal time, we keep pushing our sleeping time, we wake up exhausted. All of these are sometimes, ways in which our body lets us know that, hey, I'm really, really vigilant right now. I'm very aware. It's almost like we're trying to fight something that we can't see. Very interestingly, if you see this man, he's with a shield, but we really can't see the virus. We can't see the enemy. In these times of uncertainty, these worries and anxieties that we have are absolutely natural. I think right now the question is not whether or not we are feeling anxious, but the question is how much of that anxiousness are we feeling? We're all on that spectrum. We're all on that scale. Some of us are feeling more of it. Some of us are feeling lesser of it. And why is it natural? Because if we just contextualize it, if we look at what's happening globally, nationally, in our community, in our state, in our building, we will know that there is an actual threat to our survival. We're all trying to protect life. We have possibly not seen this amount of threat so obvious, so prolonged, such a long period of time. We're trying to avoid it, we're trying to fight it. So there is an actual threat to our survival. And anxiety is not inherently bad. Anxiety is also has a survival function in that sense. It helps us to prepare. But right now what is happening is that because it's been there for such a long period, we're unable to know or experience safety, a very, very basic psychological need. The need to feel safe. When I'm at home, I know I haven't stepped out in a while, I'm still not feeling safe. I'm still feeling like there is an impending doom, something really bad is going to happen. Because bad things are happening. We are seeing it on the news. We're feeling a loss of control. oh, I can't control whether or not I get this disease. I can't control whether or not a loved one falls sick. I can't control whether or not we will be able to get help. I can't control a lot of these external factors. And in that loss of control, we're again pushed into uncertainty. So our body is really vigilant. It's almost like it's anticipating something going wrong. So we're in fight or flight mode. We don't know what our safety nets are. We had connections, we had support systems, and suddenly we are not in touch with them. It's not the same when we're, maybe we don't text the same number of people as we would have spoken to face. What is a safety net? Do I have a guarantee that things will be okay? A lot of people have unfortunately lost jobs. All of these kind of uncertainties add to a sense of, will I be okay? Will this end? When will this end? We're constantly on our phones. A new term that has been minted has been doom scrolling. When we're scrolling through our phones almost compulsively and looking out, and we're getting a lot of this information about doomsday in that sense, not pleasant information. When we're faced with uncertainty, we try to seek out as much information as possible to kind of help ourselves make sense of the situation. So right now, as we're scrolling also, we're trying to understand, is there a pattern to this? Is there one medication that works better for this? Is there one way to deal with not feeling motivated when I'm at work? We're doing all of that to just understand and make sense, and yet it makes everything come home. When you're watching the news continuously, when you're reading articles on the internet, it feels like all the terrible things that are happening outside are also happening right here inside your house. We're vicariously living through a lot of very, very unpleasant circumstances just by hearing of certain types of news, just by hearing of it in certain ways. A lot of us may have had plans for the future, and suddenly those seem like they've been taken away. We can't say for sure. Some people's exams have gotten pushed, some people's job opportunities have changed, some people's, life plans have had to go through major revisions. And we're ruminating, we're thinking, we're trying to figure out how, when, where, what can be done. How can we have some sense of control, some semblance of making meaning of what's happening? During this pandemic, a lot of our basic needs have been are not able to find root. We're not able to make sense of it. A basic need to feel safe. How do we feel safe? When everything is uncertain. Basic need for connection. Where are those people? A lot of us are isolating. If we have to go out for a job, sometimes we're unable to meet our family members even within the same house. A need for productivity, a need for purpose. And suddenly everything seems hopeless. I don't know why I'm doing this job. I don't know what it means. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how I'm contributing. It all seems meaningless. We're faced with very big, almost existential questions. Ab kya karna hai? How do we now move ahead with this? So it'll manifest as not being able to sleep at night. Mind is rushing, like I mentioned, heart palpitations, sweating, a feeling of, I don't know how to cope with this, feeling very, very sad and low. And so how do we cope when there is so much uncertainty, so much confusion, disturbance, all of this happening? How do we then go ahead, first and foremost, to really contextualize and situate our situation in the grander scheme of things? Do we know that globally there's a pandemic, and these are objectively abnormal circumstances. They're not normal by any measure. Nationally, these are abnormal circumstances. The more we remind ourselves of this, that, I cannot expect things to be functioning, myself to be functioning in the same way as I was pre-pandemic, we will have more compassion. We will have more context in understanding even our own behaviors, that yes, I'm feeling anxious, yes, I'm feeling panicky, yes, I'm feeling worried, I'm feeling very, very scared, fearful, hopeless. But let me understand what that situation is. If I could just zoom out a little bit and see what is happening around me that I might be feeling this way, we will have a better understanding of what's happening, rather than being quick to jump and say, oh, you know what, there must be something wrong with me. So to really understand and internalize the fact that I know that I am right now in abnormal circumstances, as is the rest of the world. You are not alone. It feels like that because we're all isolated, but all of us are going through similar experiences at this time. I spoke about uncertainty and anxiousness and anxiety. And anxiety likes to know for certain. It likes to feel safe. When you know things for certain, कि हाँ ये तो हो जाएगा, ये इस तरीके से हो जाएगा, काम ऐसे करना है, we feel a sense of, I don't have to worry about that. So let's start building those smaller nets of safety in our own lives. What is the smallest thing that I have control over? When we're feeling like I can't control what's happening in the world, I can't control where this virus is coming from, I can't control how I'm feeling, all of these things, let's start with the smallest thing you can control. Maybe it is, that you choose, can you control what food you're going to eat today? Can you have some say in that, some influence? Can you cook something for yourself? Can you go make yourself a cup of tea right now? Can you make your bed? Smallest of small things that are in your control. Can I control what time I wake up in the morning and what my routine is after that? Just building these smaller circles of safety, of routine, helps our mind to know that, this is safe. Any kind of repetition. Sometimes we're watching a movie that we've already watched before, and we are more at ease than a movie that's new. We don't know how that movie might go. Similarly, for ourselves, to really start focusing on the smallest thing I have control over and start at that point. We don't have to try to control the world and its happenings, because right now it is absolutely unprecedented. But the smallest thing. Can I take a 5-minute break and look outside at a plant? Can I listen to my favorite song? Can I right now pick up my phone and call somebody up? Small aspects of control in my life. So I feel like I'm more in charge of my day. If not the world, if not the happenings, but my day, my moment, my minute. It helps to kind of calm the anxiousness that a lot of us feel about, but I don't know where anything is going. Another thing that's happened with the pandemic is we're constantly on. Somebody the other day told me, I feel like I'm constantly switched on. The off button, the pause button is somewhere lost. And in a book that I was reading, it spoke about pause rituals, which I found very, very interesting. Just to schedule it in your day, just like you would in your work to-do list, you have to get on a call at this time, you have to have a meeting at this time, write a report, do a review, to make a presentation, all of that, you've scheduled that in. You have an idea when you wake up in the morning. Similarly, to just schedule pause times, rituals of pause. A ritual is something you do every day. It's almost sacred, it frames your day in a sense. So to have something repetitive that you do that helps you to pause, like recharging your phone, like staying with yourself, connecting to yourself. With so much happening, we're almost never off. Work timings have gone haywire. We're always, available in that sense. But just to take moments, minutes, hours, days on the weekends, whenever, whatever is feasible to you, how much ever you need, to pause, to do nothing, and to do nothing consciously. Pausing looks like just looking outside the window for leisure, whether it's a minute or two. It looks like writing out your thoughts. I know somebody who really enjoys um, penning down whatever they are thinking so that it's not only in their head then. It has some outlet, some expression. Some of us may be living in difficult circumstances. We don't have people we can share our emotions and feelings with. Some people in our lives, in our families, may be going through a lot themselves. And sometimes we feel like, Arey, this is not the right time for me to tell them how I'm feeling. Maybe my feelings are not so important. They're going through so much, it doesn't look nice. But it is also a need for you to take care of yourself. So to just have this, any outlet, to write it down, some people have gratitude journaling in the at the end of the day, they would write 3 things that went well for me today, 3 things I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Some people have a journal where they write all the things they're feeling, negative thoughts that they may be feeling, and then they tear the paper. Whatever helps feel good, whatever helps you have an expression of your emotions. Sometimes we're feeling a lot, but we don't say, and it keeps building up in ourselves, and suddenly we'll have crying spells. We won't know why we're suddenly feeling sad one day, but it is because we're feeling so much for a long period of time that it's invariably going to come out one way or the other. Some pause rituals like connecting with yourself can also look like simply moving, going for a walk by yourself, 20-minute exercises, jumping around, playing with a child, something that's non-productive but very, very important for you. Helps you recharge in that sense, rejuvenate, know where you are. We're just going through the motions, it looks like right now, day after day. We don't really know the distinction between when one day ends and when another begins, and when one month ends and another begins. So to have certain breaks, to make sense of it, make meaning of it. Meditation, breathing, pausing, watching something that uplifts me, makes me happy. My favorite movie, TV, serial, talking to my, spouse, talking to my partner, talking to my parents, talking to my friends. Another thing about anxiety is it's almost like being constantly on high alert, constantly on high alert, and you may not register it as such sometimes. We just may think, I'm just feeling very restless. But to take some time to calm yourself down, and we are very capable as human beings to do that for ourselves. In these times of isolation, there are so many ways that we can do this for ourselves also. A lot of us are hungry for even a hug, an interaction, a handshake, something. So in these circumstances, when those things are really not in our control, to really focus on how can I soothe myself right now? How can I soothe my worries? Almost like you're talking to your inner child. You're talking to a child inside of you who's worried right now, and you're saying, okay, what can I do right now? Can I bring my attention to the present? How can I do that? Simple things like meditating and focusing on your breath. Just becoming aware right now where you're sitting. Okay, what part of my body is touching the chair? My back is supported by the chair, my feet are on the ground. Let me look around me, what objects surround me. All of this is bringing my attention to the here and the now. Okay, I'm noticing the breath going in, it's filling up my tummy. As it's going out, it's deflating my tummy. All of these ways are ways to ground yourself in the now, to calm your system. Breathing is a very, very important tool that can be used. that has been proven to be very effective to signal to our brain, in the body. The body also has feedback mechanisms, right? And with anxiety, what happens is we're breathing shorter, we're more ready for action, but we have nothing to act on. It's not like there is a tiger in front of us that we have to run away from. But just breathing so that we're exhaling for longer, paced breathing, focused breathing, controlled breathing, all of these ways where we're just exhaling for longer signals to our body that you're safe right now. We'll suddenly, some of us may notice that, oh, I'm feeling calmer. And self-care, most important. Am I eating my meals on time? Am I resting enough? Am I feeling okay? How many times in the day do we check in with ourselves and say, hey, am I feeling okay? And yet on every call, when we start the call, we're asking everybody, hey, how are you doing? But just to, turn that question to yourself and say, am I doing okay? What do I need right now? Self-care is also not just physical. It's not just sleep and rest and food, but it is, or, hygiene, taking care of ourselves, bathing. It is also sometimes, spiritual. Am I connecting to something? For some of us who are religious and spiritual, am I connecting to something that I believe in? That can be very helpful for a lot of people. For other people, it is community. Am I taking care of myself by connecting to people that I know? I know we're in very, very tough times right now. It's difficult to go and meet anybody. We're all feeling that lack very strongly. But yet we have the boon of technology. And all of you, I mean, definitely we're, the audiences of developers. So, to just use that to our advantage. Can we schedule some time in the day to have, games at the end of the day with somebody who's sitting even in the next state, not even in the same state as me? A lot of us were playing Ludo last year, on apps such as House Party, where people were playing games together. Some kind of ritual that helps us to connect with one another, even in these weird and distressing times. Another thing that happens when we're rumination that I mentioned, overthinking, fearful thoughts, intrusive thoughts. I'm definitely going to get corona. And that thought just keeps getting, popping up in my head. I'm definitely going to fall sick. I'm definitely not going to have help. And that goes into a spiral. How do we stop that thought? We say, hey, listen, I'm not going to take you on face value. Let me really examine you as though, when something comes to us, if let's assume that we're lawyers and we're just asking that thought questions, we're saying, hey, what evidence do I have that you'll definitely get sick? Or what evidence do we have that, this is definitely going to be end up only terribly? We tend to do that. We tend to think of the worst case scenario and assume that that is the only thing that will happen in that situation. And you can imagine what that must do to us, our bodies, our minds. We're anticipating the worst. We're saying, see now, and the littlest evidence of it, we'll say, see now, I told you it was going to happen that way. We generalize. Usko aisa hua tha, to ab mere ko bhi aisa hoga. That person lost their job. I'm definitely going to lose my job. I don't know how it's going to work out. I'm not going to be, and if I lose my job, it'll definitely be terrible. I don't know how we're going into a spiral. And to stop ourselves and say, hey, what evidence do I have for this thought? Am I only assuming the worst? So really checking in with yourself. It's like balancing the thought on a balancing scale, on a balancing scale where you put the thought on one end and you examine it on the other. Don't let one get too heavy. We only assume कि मेरे को तो कुछ नहीं होगा या मेरे को हर कोई चीज हो जाएगी. We're really trying to find a middle way, Either we're going out with the confidence that, oh, you know what, this pandemic doesn't impact me. People who think a certain way, it only impacts them. Or we're thinking, oh my God, even if I'm sitting at home and I'm taking all the precautions, I'm definitely sure at some point I'm going to get it. To bring ourselves to a center. and to calm ourselves as and when possible. A lot of it is fueled by, like I spoke about doom scrolling. A lot of it is fueled by the kind of information we're getting. Oh, did you hear so and so person got impacted in this way? Did you hear this is what they're doing now? Did you hear about this new policy? Did you hear that at work they're going to bring these changes? Did you hear that this person was impacted? And these are the thoughts that are occupying our mind. News, what kind of news, in what way it reaches us, WhatsApp forwards that have sensationalized information, this child was impacted in this way, this is the cure, path breaking, all of these kind of sensationalized information that we don't know whether they're true or false can have a big impact on the way that we're dealing with the work. I think one of the questions that came up from the Google forms that were circulated before the session was, how do we fight this misinformation? All these pundits on WhatsApp, or the people who are saying, that it is a certain way when we don't know whether it is that way. There are lots of forwards that are going in one direction, and we don't know because that's not the same information we're seeing on the news. So how do we bridge that gap? And we just stop and say, hey, am I going to engage with this information? Am I following the right accounts on social media? A lot of the times when we're seeing all these pleas for help, also that is very, it fills us with grief and sadness. And that's how we know we're interconnected with each other. It's not happening to us immediately, but even if it is happening on the outside, we're feeling very scared about it. So to really fight misinformation is to question the facts and to have an objective news source that we trust and say, okay, I'm going to look at these 3 websites and these 3 news channels, and I know that WhatsApp is not the best place for me to get that information. To go by the guidelines that the government is giving, to go by the guidelines that the health experts are giving, to go by the guidelines that people in the world are offering as objective medical bodies. And that's what we have to trust, something based on science rather than opinion. So we have to be very careful about the kind of news we're consuming, because then that fuels a lot of our anxious thoughts. And to choose not just the scary narratives, but also the narratives of hope, of recovery. While there are all these cases, there are also recovery cases. While there are all these people, who have struggled, there are, it's also, they've also received help in this way. To have a perspective that allows for both sides. So this, the way that we engage with our narrative also, either we're saying, oh, I don't know, everything is horrible, which is also not the case. Yes, things are terrible. They're impacting us in very difficult ways. But to also look at and not ignore, the narratives of hope, resilience, community, interdependence, engagement, connection. So engaging very carefully with that information that we're choosing and the perspective that we're building, the narrative that we're talking about. I think apart from anxiety, there's also tremendous loss. I think especially, unfortunately, the second wave has hit us in a way where deaths are much more. News is not just a number now, but it is actually news at home. People we know, we love have been impacted. There is a loss not just of life, and not just directly, but also indirectly. We're constantly hearing of it on WhatsApp, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Snap, on all these different social media. on YouTube, on the news. And it all feels like, oh my God, it's just, creeping in, and somebody I love is going to be next. We also have the loss of normalcy. There was once a normal that we were used to, and now we don't have that anymore. The loss of the idea of a particular kind of future that we had. And the most heartbreaking, I guess, is the loss of faith. I don't know what is going to happen. I don't know how things are going to change. I don't know if they can. And a lot of us are feeling that, A lot of us are down in the dumps. We're very, very impacted. We don't know if there's a way out. We're anticipating loss. If somebody is sick in the family, if somebody is sick in somebody else's family, we're very, very scared. And so what can we do in the face of grief? Grief is a huge and distressing emotion. It's not possible for us to simply get over it in a day. But there are things that we can do. First and foremost, to acknowledge it. To say, hey, what am I feeling? Checking in with yourself, like I said. Acknowledge what you're feeling. Accept it as your own. No feeling is, a lot of times we judge ourselves for feeling some things. We say, how can I be feeling sad? How can I be feeling, grief? How can I be feeling angry? How can I be? And notice how it's coming up for you. Grief comes up in a lot of different forms and ways also. There's not one way that it comes up. So just to really name it, first of all, for yourself. A lot of times we just want to ignore it and we say, I'm doing okay, I'm not very impacted. Yeah, it's sad, but I don't, itna bura bhi nahi hai. But to really stop and say, am I doing okay? And what is this feeling? What is it called? And not judge ourselves for it, because that feeling is telling us something. Grief is telling us that there was something that we valued that we lost. For some of us. For some of us, it's telling us that, we really are feeling angry, anxious, helpless, hopeless, whatever it might be. Second, after we've named it, to contextualize it. To say, why am I feeling this? Do I understand that? Again, zooming out and saying, I'm feeling this because this so and so has happened. I'm in the middle of a global pandemic. The world is impacted by it. And yet there's something very personal that may have happened, a personal loss. And once we've named it and accepted it and acknowledged it, we then go into, and how do we respond to this? What do we do about this feeling? Am I unable to go through my day as I normally would? Am I very impacted in my day-to-day functioning that I'm really not able to cope with things? Then I can seek help. There's so much help available. Can I call up somebody who really understands me and talk to them and say, hey, I'm not doing okay. How are you doing? How are you coping? What has worked for you? Can you tell me this is what is working for me? Or more seriously, to seek professional help from therapists, helplines, individuals who are all here to provide support. There are support circles. So then we decide how to respond accordingly. If it's really impacting my everyday functioning, I'm unable to sleep, eat, I'm constantly thinking about it, I'm unable to focus and contribute in the ways that I used to, then I need help. If I'm doing okay, I know I can give it time, then to constantly check in with myself and have my support circle with me. What I mean by support is just one person. It can be a person, it can be a group of people, it can be my family, it can not be my family, it can also be a third person. that I reach out to. But in sharing, we feel heard. We must have noticed sometimes when we just talk to somebody about how we're feeling, we feel a lot lighter. Oh, I'm not the only one who's feeling that. You're also going through something similar. Thank God I'm not the only one. Have this community that we're building by simply being vulnerable, by simply bringing our whole selves there and saying, I'm not going to edit out the good parts, bad parts, sorry. I'm not going to edit out the bad parts. But if I need support, I can seek it from these people that I trust will be able to meet my needs, meet my need for support and emotional uh, listening, hearing. So having this community, identify what is it? Is it a person? Is it a group of people? Is it your connection with the universe? What is it that makes you feel like you are not alone, that this is your support system, that anything you believe in? And the most important with grief is, a lot of times they say you can't think your way through grief. You have to feel your way through it. So when we try to cut short the process and say, I'm okay, I'm doing okay, I will be okay, and we're just ignoring our feelings sometimes. But if we are not doing well, to just acknowledge it and say, I know this is how I'm feeling, and maybe I should reach out to somebody. Because in hearing, in sharing, in talking, there is so much processing. We get to understand how that event impacted us, how we can move forward from it. And the more we try to hide it, not deal with it, not look at it, it may come up in different forms, whether it's sleeplessness, sadness, all of that. But help is available. Help is available to you in the form of your community, your support systems, professionals, helplines, mental health practitioners, but also that, sometimes small acts in which you find purpose. I want to help this person. Sometimes that also helps us restructure. So both ways, to take help when we need it without stigma, without thinking, oh, what does it mean that I need help? It just means we're all living through extremely tough times, and it's absolutely okay to hold that space for yourself and say, I need this kind of support, and for you to hold that space for other people. When you call and check in with somebody, to really ask, hey, are you doing okay? And be prepared to hear what they have to say. Yes, I'm doing okay. Or yes, no, I'm not doing okay. Oh, in what ways can I support you? What kind of help do you need? What are you going through? To be curious. Nobody likes to be given advice, but just even if asking a couple of questions, helps there to be a connection that we form. Helps for us to know that we're not alone in this. We're all feeling it. Oh, it's not only me, And when we are in the middle of so much loss, chaos, sadness, it helps to have a routine. It gives that structure to the day. When otherwise we would rather just stay in bed, it helps to give structure to the day. When we've lost a very important person in our life, it can feel like it's very, very tough to move forward in the same way that we used to. Very understandable, it's natural. To acknowledge that and say, this is a tough time for me. And to have something to fall back on, the repetition of a routine. I have to wake up at this time, I have to sleep at this time, I have to work for this only this much time, I'm going to set these boundaries. I'm going to work, not do all the work on my bed. I'm going to have a desk where I do my work and then I go to the bed only to rest. All of these things help us to structure our day. This time I wake up, this time I eat breakfast, this time I go for a bath, this time I talk to my sister at night, this time I do. All of this helps to structure the day. So it's just framing the day and falling back on the routine when everything else seems to be out of our control. In terms of also, the workspace, there is absolute burnout where we don't know how to continue this, because work from home can be tricky for some of us. For some of us, it looks like not having clear start and end times. We're always on call. Somebody can call at 8:30, 9:30, 10:30 and say, "Ghar pe hi to ho." But what that does to our mental health is that we're not able to give same weightage to our home life and to our work life. So it is very, very important to have time taken for ourselves. A lot of the questions that we got on the Google form said, I have no motivation to do work. I can't wake up in the morning. I don't feel like going to work. Absolutely. I think all of us, in some degree or capacity, are questioning, what does it mean right now? Is it possible to go on when I'm dealing with so much? Look at the context of that. Look at the context of that feeling also. We're doing home chores, we're dealing with loss, we're dealing with grief, we're dealing with our own worries and anxieties. It can be exhausting mentally, emotionally, physically. We're all stuck in one place. Some of us are living with difficult people. Some of us don't have space at home. All of that is possible. All of us, some of us must be going through that at this time. And on top of that, we're feeling like I'm not doing enough. I log on to LinkedIn and people have done 15 courses in this lockdown, and I'm struggling to wake up in the morning and go to work. We're all feeling this guilt of, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing well enough. And this idea really comes from, an idea where we value busyness. Ki humko to busy hona hai. No matter what's happening in the world, you have your laptop and you have to get work done. The word that's come out recently is, and that people have been using in the pandemic, is toxic productivity. No matter what's happening, it's like circumstances don't exist, just the individual and the laptop, and you have to work like nothing has gone wrong. When there are people who may have been infected by COVID in your family, when you may have been infected by COVID in your family, you don't get days off because you're anyway at home. All of these things, and we're expecting people to work non-stop with as much gusto and enthusiasm as they would in offices, which is an absolutely unachievable idea for some people because of just the circumstances that we are in. When we bring ourselves to the work, we have to remind ourselves that we are working from home. And we are also at home, and work is one part of that. It's not the whole of it. We feel so conscious, if there is pressure cooker ka awaaz in the background, if there's a doorbell that's rung, if there's a dog that comes. But to really, and we try so hard to segregate that. Don't do that, I'm so sorry about that. It's almost like we're trying to separate everything. We're sanitizing our identity and we're saying, I'm only this person who can work no matter what the circumstances. But is that sustainable? Is that possible in these circumstances? For a long time? Because we are living with people. That is also my reality, that I am living at home. I'm working from home. This is my reality. I can't get rid of all of that just to, have a certain image that I portray, a certain idea that I'm living up to, that I have to be productive no matter what. And we're giving more importance to, work than any other aspect of our lives, which is leisure, rest, pause, break. Without that, it's not possible to be productive also. It's like trying to operate on low battery. We don't have community, we're all working independently, so we can't even call in and check in with each other and say, hey, is this going, are you finding it difficult to do this? Because we don't know, we don't have any shared space. We're criticizing ourselves and we're saying, because I can't do this, because I can't do as well as I'm thinking other people are doing, there's something wrong with me. We don't know the reality of that, because everybody has their own journeys in that sense of also dealing with things, of being in the pandemic. So in this situation, then what helps is to have self-compassion, to drop self-criticism. Catch yourself when your inner critic is talking to you and saying, hey, you know what, look again, you did that thing wrong. There's something wrong with you. You're not doing this right. You're a XYZ. The labels that we give ourselves so freely. So to really have compassion for ourselves and say, as you would for your friend or for a child or for your younger sibling, if they said to you, I'm not able to do the things that I usually would do, would you say, yeah, there's something wrong with you, that's why? No. Similarly, to use that same narrative for ourselves and say, I understand that it is tough right now. It's tough for everybody. You're not alone in this. Give it context. Even your inner critic needs to have that kind of balancing thoughts that we spoke about and say, hey, do you know what's happening in the world right now? So drop the self-criticism. It can take time, it's going to be difficult, but just to cultivate better, kinder self-talk, to talk to yourself better. You're living in your mind the whole time, more than anybody else, shouting at you or criticizing you, not even your bosses, not even your people in your house, but we ourselves have an internalized critic, and that critic is constantly like, dekho. So to really talk to ourselves compassionately, kindly, understandingly. Second is to know our boundaries. I am only available to work between this and this time. All of these things that you have to decide for yourself. What are my work timings? How many calls am I going to be on in a day? What do I feel comfortable with and what is manageable with my situation? If I'm caring for somebody at home, if there is an elderly person that I'm caring for, if there's somebody infected with COVID that I'm doing things for, what is it that I can realistically manage at this time? And you set boundaries accordingly. I will be available from this time to this time. Can I get back to your email at that, the next day? All of these kind of smaller boundaries that you decide for yourself that are comfortable for you. And reach out to your colleagues, to your bosses, to your employers, to people in your work community to extend empathy and compassion and understanding and say, oh, I can imagine how tough that must be. Do you want to take some time? And you know what, actually, I'm going through something similar and it's so tough. I don't know how you're coping with it. This is what is helping me. Can you tell me what's helping you? We're allowing our full selves to be part of our work self also. A lot of times we edit that part of ourselves and we say, you know what, no, I can't let them know that I'm struggling when it's obviously impacting my work. So the more we talk about it, the more there is a community, sense of community that people have. The community of knowing that everybody is going through something similar, they will understand. Don't hide aspects of your lived reality in that sense. Create something for creation, whether it's cooking food, whether it is crochet, anything like that helps us give some kind of control. Do that. Do something of leisure for yourself, something that you like, something that you are interested in, something that you enjoy. And rest, whatever that idea of rest looks like for you, whether it looks like sleeping, whether it looks like spending time with your family, whether it looks like spending time in nature, listening to a song, but resting your mind and your body. This was my presentation, and this is from a book that I really like. It's called The Horse, the Mole, the Fox, and the Boy. And the quote says, "What's the best thing that you've learned about storms?" And the horse says, "The best thing I've learned about storms is that they also end." And so we're hoping that very soon in the future, this time will tide over, and that you have all the help, resources, support, community, and skills that you need to reach out for help. Therapize is a great platform. This month, I think Therapize is also providing free one-on-one sessions, which you can check out. It is anyway a platform in which you can reach out to mental health professionals. Some helplines that I can tell you at the end of this session is that if something difficult has come up for you, if you have realized that maybe, I need some help, it would be helpful for me to talk to somebody who understands, that there are several support circles that are operational right now with different mental health organizations, but helplines are always available. iCall helpline is run by trained mental health professionals. It is operational Monday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. There's also Parivarta in Bangalore has a helpline that is operational, I think, 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. And there is Samaritans, which is operational 24 hours. So these are some names of helplines that you can reach out to in case you're feeling very distressed, but also to just reach out to mental health professionals as and when you feel comfortable, you feel the need. Otherwise, to just talk to people around you, to express yourself and say, you know what, times are tough and I'm wondering how you're doing. Because I'm not doing okay, or I am doing okay, but I guess I need help with this aspect, whatever it may be. I hope this was helpful. This is my Instagram for in case any of you want to follow, and I think that's about it. I would be happy to take
Sure, yeah, thanks, Aisha. Great session, and we could all relate to whatever you said, each and every single point, at least for me. So, very helpful, and thank you for doing it. So, Dharmesh, over to you for any questions.
Yeah, although we are not seeing any specific questions as such, I think really an insightful session, Aisha. Thank you so much. And definitely, I'm going away with some of these key points, especially, I mean, to highlight something, especially the aspect of taking pause in various aspects of your life. I think that is something we all should actually follow, which we tend to kind of ignore. Might be like I'll just share one question. It's not coming from the questions, but yeah, overall in terms of how the situation has been in a specific like a work life balance kind of a scenario, and people working from home, how do they actually say a no? It's
yeah,
difficult to say no sometimes, but yeah, how do you do that?
definitely. I think boundary setting brings up a lot of feelings for everybody. We think it's mean, we think we will be reprimanded for it, we think people will think we don't want to work, any of that. But definitely, it is a skill, and it takes some amount of knowing that it will not be it might not always be well received, but it can happen in indirect and direct ways, is what I would say. A direct way would be, I'm sorry, can I get back to you about this tomorrow morning? Would that be okay? I'm a little caught up right now. I have some chores to do at home. as you know, we're all working from home, to have that shared understanding. Sometimes when we talk about the softer aspect of things, when we let people into the vulnerable side of our personal lives and say, oh, I understand this is really important at this moment, but would you be okay if I sent it first thing tomorrow morning for you? But at this moment, I'm really caught up with something else. It can also be indirect. This was indirect. A direct would be, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now. I hope you understand. And this is a skill. So something that I usually tell people is, if you're making any kind of request, if you're setting any kind of boundary, just be very clear about why you're doing that, and know that it will not always don't go in with the intention that I have to make sure that nothing goes wrong, because sometimes you have to understand why we're setting that boundary. Is it important for you to set that boundary? Do you have to take care of your mental, physical health? Do you have work, other stuff that you're attending to, that we're paid for a certain amount of time? All of these things to keep in mind, and then to go ahead and make, express what you're feeling. Sometimes, I receive an email after my work time and I'm unable to attend to it. You describe what has happened. You express how you feel about that. I feel quite caught up because I'm unable to do that in the moment, and I feel uneasy, I feel unprepared. You reinforce what you would like. I would like if it would be okay for me to respond to it the next day. I will not be available to answer emails after this time. And you say how that will help you. It will really help me to kind of balance the demands on me from my home front and my work front. Would that be okay? Be open to a little negotiation and say, okay, I will read an email, I will acknowledge it, but can I do some part of it tomorrow? Anything that works for your situation. So in that sense, understanding that boundaries are flexible, they're not barriers. You're not saying to anybody, "Mere ko koi kaam mat do," but you're saying that jo kaam de rahe ho aap is, these are the timings that I'll be happy to do it in. After that, it becomes difficult. Why does it become difficult?
Right. Got it. Yeah. I mean, that perfectly makes sense. I mean, if you kind of acknowledge anything in a softer tone, and while you're also acknowledging it, I'm sure like the other side would also like, take it in a positive stride. So yeah, that makes sense. So we'll take up a few more. So someone wants to know any good links for teens as such in kind of managing their mental health. So I know like we talked more at a generic level, but do you want to share some quick insights around how kids can also cope up with this, because they have not been to school at least for a year or more. I'm not sure when are they going to go back. Maybe a quick pointers around for
very,
kids.
very tough for children, I think, also because they're secondhand feeling everything. They don't have enough information sometimes. Adults don't really sit and explain because sometimes they don't understand, but they know that something is wrong in their bodies, and it's very tough because you're not allowed to go out to play. And for children, it's so important, their friends at that age, especially in teenage. But to really be checking in with them, I would say communication, acknowledging their feelings also. We can't assume that because they're children, they don't understand, unko kuch ho nahi raha hai. But to really sit and say, I know this is a tough time for you and I'm here to listen. Even that kind of acknowledgement opens a conversation. Then you can seek help. I would say any of these helplines operate for teenagers. iCall definitely does. Parivartan definitely does. There are mental health professions. There are support circles for adolescents especially. So all of this is happening. There's lots of resources. But for you as a parent interacting with the child, to acknowledge how they're feeling and to allow them ways to connect to their friends also. Whether it is, okay, I will allow you to play Ludo in the night, or, why don't you call up your friend and let's have a play date set up. Anything like that that's happening virtually for you, that you're taking care of for yourself, please take care of your child also in that way.
Definitely. So we'll take one last one before we kind of end up. It's like, how do you actually stay motivated and positive even when like nothing is working in your favor? I mean, things happen, but yeah, there might be a situation where it's still not working in your favor. How do you still keep up to your toes?
There's a word that's come out in the New York Times article by Adam Grant called languishing. And it's been very, very popular in the past few weeks. What he says is, Languishing is that state where you know that you're not feeling extremely motivated, and that's the feeling that we're feeling in the past year with the pandemic, that nothing is terribly wrong but nothing is terribly right also. So you're just in the middle, you're waiting. This is not the time. It's not humanly possible to be positive when we're surrounded by loss, death, grief, anxiety, stress. But yes, there are ways to build resilience. What is resilience? Resilience is just the ability to adapt to the changes that are happening around us. And how do we do that? We simply do that by talking about what's tough about it right now. By anybody who has a shared experience with you, anybody who's gone through a similar thing, when you immediately find that person, it relieves some amount of loneliness that we're feeling in that feeling. If you're feeling unmotivated at work, I'm sure if you have a social chat for your workspace, there will be 100 people who will kind of respond in the same way and say, yeah, that's same for me. Just when we don't ask, and this usually happens in our workspace, that we try not to talk about anything but work. नहीं कुछ नहीं होता, आप unmotivated feel कर रहे हो tomorrow morning yet. But when there's a conversation that's open about it, people feel compassion, feel understanding, feel connection, they feel cared for. When you feel cared for, you will do much better. So to have somebody to talk to, reach out to your sources of support, your networks of support. So to whoever's asked this question, and when things are tough, don't force yourself to feel positive.
Correct.
Nahin, I have to stay positive right now. You don't have to. If you're not feeling it, acknowledge where you are at right now. Don't push yourself to reach somewhere.
Correct. Sure. Thanks again, Aisha. I think that should answer the question. But yeah, again, thank you so much for joining in and sharing these valuable insights. And I'm sure we might want some additional sessions, and people might reach out to you. So yeah, thanks
Most
again for
definitely.
extending your personal handles on Insta and the other channels. Thank you so much again. It has been a pleasure interacting, and hope you have liked the interactions as well. Thank you again.
Yes, I absolutely loved being here. Thank you, Dharmesh. Thank you, Ransi. And, I hope this was helpful to all of you. So thank you for being here. And thank you to Therapize, I think. Yeah.
Thanks again.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.